I'm sorry, I know no one wants to hear this, okay? No one wants to hear me tell them to stop having fun, to stop enjoying life, to stop buying things. But I really think that like at some point, us in the West really gotta stop and reflect and maybe stop prioritizing our own joy, our own short-term happiness and addiction to material things over the actual human lives of other people. Ciao VISIEM, hi all, happy Earth Day, a day that should happen every single day. I know it's not going to be Earth Day when I upload this, but today it's Earth Day, so I'm here today to ask you nicely to please stop buying shit, okay? You have enough. I promise you, you have enough. You don't need another pillow, you don't need another set of sheets, you don't need another mug or another pair of scissors for the living room. You don't need a Roomba vacuum cleaner or another headphone set or whatever it is that people buy. I promise you, you don't need it, okay? The only thing that you might need is more plants, but that's about it. I promise you. Now, of course, I'm here to talk about consumerism, overconsumption, especially Western overconsumption, about capitalism, and about the constant production and maintenance of our desire to buy. And I'm here to talk about Mother Earth, okay? And I'm here to talk about nature and sustainability and the human cost that Western consumption has and the suffering it creates and the destruction that it really creates. Now quickly, before you click away, because I can hear people thinking, what? Like, you want me to stop buying things, okay? I'm sad and miserable and I'm depressed and I have to go to a job that I hate, like living under capitalism is hell. I'm suffering under patriarchy, xenophobia, under all these systems of oppression, and you want me to deny myself joy? No, I'm not having this. Before you click away, I get it, okay? I've been poor my whole life. Currently, I'm making 25K, you know, paying like $1,000 a rent every month, and this is the most money I've ever had. So I'm actually able to buy more now than I've ever had in my entire life with this like little stipend that I have. And yeah, I'm suffering. I'm like clinically depressed and have a lot of anxiety, so I get it. Like, I totally get it. But don't click away, okay? I just want you to know that like all these emotions and feelings, if you're having them right now, if you are entering like defense mode, you know, like that's normal, okay? Let those feelings come, say hello to them, let's sit down with them, invite them in, and let's talk to them, okay? There's one thing I've learned from talking, especially from talking about veganism with Western people, is that absolutely nothing in my experience gets them more riled up and more defensive and more into their feelings than anyone questioning or critiquing their consumption habits, okay? Consumption habits is something, and I kid you not, like from a lot of experience here in the US at least, like that's something that's off limits, okay? Like you cannot critique anyone's consumption habits here, like a big no-no. You don't want to go, well, I'm going that route, okay? I'm going that route. So to begin this by reflecting on my own experience, as I've said before, I've been poor my whole life and I grew up in Eastern Europe, okay? So overconsumption is not something that I could have engaged in even if I wanted to. Like, even if I wanted my hardest, okay, there was no possible way. I mean, and there's also something about growing up outside of the West. Like, for example, you know, there was no Walmart or Target or CVS, you know, those types of things. So you're really not in the, well, also most people are poor, so they really don't have the money, even if you had those brands. But there's also something about like, you're unable to shop spontaneously the way you are in the West. Like growing up, if I needed a pair of scissors or if I needed a notebook, I would have to go to the notebook store. If I needed a vase, I would have to go to the vase store, you know, like and I think that actually helps reduce consumerism a lot. Like, you know, all those memes about people going to Target and buying $100 worth of things or something. I don't know, can't relate, but I know it's a thing. Anyways, so yeah, so for most of my childhood and like all of my life up to this day, overconsumption is not something that I could have engaged in, especially when I was living in Latvia. I think like on any given year, you could ask me, what did you buy this year outside of essentials, which I'm counting as like groceries and hygiene products basically. I could probably tell you and list every single thing and it would be like 7 items, okay? So trust me, I get it. Like, especially now having some money, it's like, damn, this is something that I've been denied my whole life. And now I have like $100 or $200 left at the end of the month, or, you know, throughout the month. And you want me not to spend that? You want me to not buy stuff? Like, totally get it, totally reasonable and understandable. So anyways, basically most of my life I spent not buying things. And I think that there is something, unless you're poor, and I mean like really poor, unless you have no money, there is something people don't understand about that sentence. Like when I say I didn't buy anything, like I had no money, I mean like there was no money, like I didn't buy anything. I feel like a lot of people in the West have this sense of like, yeah, I'm not buying nothing, and then they buy 2, 3, 4 things in the week, you know, like random $2, $3, $4 things, because money is different here, and like prices for products is so much different here. And with that, I feel like a lot of people in the West, when we talk about consumption and overconsumption, and you know, buying things that aren't necessary, most people have this immediate reaction that's like, yeah, I don't do that, of course, you know, like I don't buy luxury items, I don't have 3 cars or 4 fur coats or something, you know, like I don't spend $100 at Target every week, when really that's not it. That's not the only thing that we're talking about, okay? But of course people are buying things in the US. Of course people in the West are over-consuming, you know, over-consuming is basically consuming something at a rate that's unsustainable, like we can't reproduce those things at the same rate. But of course, we live under capitalism. There is constant, this machine at work to make us want to buy more, okay? What's wrong with that? Okay, well, for starters, there's a lot wrong with placing value in material things and possessions, and, you know, like, with that, placing value on people who have those possessions. A lot of our identity and personality is based on what we have. Like, there was this one really good article about how, like, even like the type of beer that we choose to drink, you know, like you identify your personality with this brand of beer that now says something about you as a person. Everything in our house, you know, like even the things that we wear, like all of these things are meant to tell others or show others what we are through our material possessions, and that also can be incredibly detrimental to our mental health, and especially because this constant cycle of, you know, producing within us that need and desire to buy more basically means we're never happy, we're never satisfied, we're in this constant vicious cycle of I'll be happy when I have the newest iPhone, I'll be happy when I have a MacBook, I'll be happy when I can buy like a bigger TV or an elliptical inside my living room, or, you know, like this dress or this belt or this bag or these sneakers or whatever. I mean, it's like a constant circle that just leaves us miserable. Like, it's just how it is. Of course, is exactly what capitalism wants, okay? Capitalism creates this vicious circle of misery. The job of, you know, of it is to basically sell us things that we do not need, to make us think that we need things that we do not need. That's literally what advertising is for. So much of our society is designed in a way to make sure that, you know, like something convinces us, even each other, we convince each other that we need these things that we do not need. And it works. It works really, really well. We're all buying things. I'm not immune to this. Like, I'm not talking from a place of perfection. Like, same here. It works. But, you know, I'm not... These aren't even the things I'm going to be talking about or what I'm interested in. To be perfectly honest, if Western people, specifically middle, upper middle, and wealthier Western people want to be miserable, if they want to be stuck in a constant circle of I need this or I'm not going to be happy, and then just staying unhappy their whole lives, that's fine with me. I don't have no issue with that. You go be miserable. Your freedom, your right to be unhappy, your right to, you know, like be a slave to capitalism, that's fine. That's not my issue. The problem is the environmental cost that this has, and also the human cost that this has. And that's That's my whole point in this overconsumption video. In other words, I'm not concerned about the cost of overconsumption to your wallet or to the mental health well-being of Western people. I am concerned about the environmental consequences. I'm concerned about the people in the global south, but also people in Western countries like in the US, like working class people who have to pay the price for this overconsumption. And let's get this straight. Western overconsumption is a major problem. It's a major problem for environmental destruction, for a lot of human suffering on the planet. Western overconsumption is at the root of many of those problems. I'm gonna make actually another video just on fast fashion because I have a lot to say about that in terms of Western overconsumption and the human and environmental cost, and another video on veganism in terms of Western overconsumption because I have a lot to say with that in terms of like capitalism and ethical consumption and all of these things, and mostly overconsumption and veganism. But anyways, one of the reasons why I want to talk about this and why I feel so strongly about this, like I feel in pain thinking about like overconsumption. I genuinely sometimes get anxiety attacks just thinking about the trash that I produce. And most of my household, like I've swapped like sustainability swaps everywhere. I buy nothing that's single use or anything of the sort, but like still I produce so much trash, and I can legit get anxiety attacks over just thinking, where is this going? Like every time I go to the store and I have to buy spinach in a freaking plastic bag, like my heart is racing, you know? So part of the reason I want to talk about this is because I come from Eastern Europe, Latvia, and also, you know, like Eastern Europe, Latvia, like 10, 20 years ago when I lived there, and how I grew up, and it was radically, radically different. And coming from that environment into this like US overconsumption, like hardcore capitalism, I feel like I'm seeing things that you don't really notice immediately, instinctively, if you were born and raised here. And that's normal. That's like that with a lot of things, which is, you know, also certain things about like racism and sexism are things that like I'm vividly noticing here because I wasn't socialized in this and didn't grow up in this as being normal. So like for example, in the US, whenever I walk inside of a Chipotle, okay, and I see a plastic fork, like my heart hurts. And it's because I grew up with no fast food chains and like never seeing a plastic fork. So obviously I have a different reaction to that, and maybe a stronger reaction because I come from an environment where that wasn't the case. If I grew up, you know, like going to Chipotle once in a while or going to McDonald's or whatever and like seeing plastic cutlery, maybe I wouldn't feel as strongly about it, or I wouldn't notice it maybe. Of course, it's not us to blame for environmental destruction, okay? Like this system is not our fault. I'm not here to place blame on us on that. It's capitalism, and it's the few corporations that are producing the vast majority of this like environmental destruction. Like as they say, the planet is not dying, it's being killed by people who have names and addresses. Completely true, okay? That's what, obviously, like this discourse is really important, in which we recognize that it's actually the corporations and, you know, these people profiting off of the destruction of the planet and human suffering that want us to shift this blame on ourselves, on individuals, and, you know, like choose to not use straws and like do all of those things as if it was up, like as if we were the biggest contributors to this destruction. Of course it's not the case, you know, like we know what's to, so I'm not even engaging in that. Like I'm kind of working under the assumption that we all understand like what's to blame, and you know the ways that capitalism as a system and corporations and corporate greed and so on is the actual root cause of this, but also not totally out of our control, okay? This is a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to talk about. I know that it's extremely easy to just like write off everything I'm saying right now and just be like, nope, it's the corporations, it's, you know, it's not, I can't do, I'm just one little Lulu, like I can't do nothing. I think like a great example of that, and what I keep coming back to, is that, you know, there's this slogan that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And basically like what that means is, you know, for example, like being vegan, a lot of vegans say that like their lifestyle is cruelty free. No, okay, like your lifestyle is not cruelty free. The strawberries that you're eating, the tomatoes that you're eating were picked by people who are exploited, underpaid, living in horrible conditions, getting paid nothing, likely undocumented, you know, like experiencing a lot of different systems of oppression and exploitation that are cruel, and they are suffering. So no, okay, there is no, that's what it's meant by the slogan of like, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Now, instead, people took that to mean there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, thus I can consume whatever I want and do whatever I want, and ran with it, okay? That's what happened. Instead of it, you know, the original meaning of it being that like, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism because all production happens through exploitation, and you know, like we should still do our best, and we should still reduce our consumption and critique it, and we should still hold corporations and people and companies accountable, and that there's degrees of variance between how, I don't know, Amazon or whatever in this business does things, and you know, the conditions that workers are working at and stuff like that. No. People disregarded all of that and ran with it to just mean that, you know what, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, so like whatever, I can do whatever, like it doesn't matter. No, honey, absolutely not the case, okay? But I'm not even here to talk about or discuss the different companies that are more ethical, less ethical, or any of that. I'm talking about overconsumption. I'm talking about consuming way more than is necessary, which is what people in the West do a lot, okay? Overconsumption, basically like resources being consumed at an unsustainable level, okay? And who overconsumes? Rich people overconsume. A lot of Western people or people living in the West overconsume by default because of how we live here, you know, like the way it's set up, as I talked about, like going to Chipotle. I don't have to be rich to go to Chipotle, okay? And you know, like my building doesn't recycle and things like that, and a lot of the stuff I buy at home, I would be buying it, you know, without plastic. Here I have no choice, and you know, like we just consume more generally. So it's I think it's like the easy thing to say is to be like, you know, it's the billionaires and millionaires, which is true, completely true, but it's the easy thing to say that like Kylie Jenner needs to stop buying purses and shoes and like opening her third closet. The Kardashians need to stop flying their private jets because that has way more environmental consequences than, you know, my little trip somewhere. And that's completely true, and they should stop, and in fact we should just eat them, like eat the rich all the way. You know, like I'm not disputing that in the slightest. I'm with that argument, but I'm also saying that like we should still examine our own consumption habits, especially those of us living in the West. And as an example, as I told y'all, I make $25K a year. I, you know, spend half of that in rent and like other bills and stuff. And I still, living in the United States of America, I still have the ability to overconsume simply because of, first, just the lifestyle, which is mostly out of my choice, and second of all, just because of how cheap stuff is. So this isn't just something we should push away and be like, oh, it's just the rich people doing this. They're clearly the problem, clearly, but I don't think that really removes all responsibility from me and just, you know, being like, well, I make so little, I can't, you know, do that much, so whatever. I think like I still would like to place some responsibility on myself and, you know, like really evaluate my own consumption habits, and maybe you want to do that too. And once again, as I said, I'm not speaking from a place of perfection. This is also a journey that I'm on, and I'm working hard to make sure that like I'm not, you know, I'm consuming less, or I'm only consuming things that I need, that I'm living in a sustainable manner, and all of that stuff. Absolutely. But I think the first step is recognizing that perhaps our consumption habits are a little problematic, that there's definitely room for improvement, and then going with that. And I've realized from my time here in the US that a lot of people not even do not, but also refuse to examine their consumption habits, let alone recognize that they may be problematic, and maybe by default of living in the West, living in an imperial core, we may also be responsible for, you know, like the human cost, the environmental cost of all the things that we purchase. Now, reducing your consumption, consuming less, does not mean buying nothing, okay? It does not mean living the way that I lived in Latvia, or going fully minimalist, unless that's what you want to do. I'm a minimalist and I love it, but it also doesn't mean, you know, like denying yourself all joy and stuff, although if your joy only comes from material possessions, then maybe you should examine that a little bit. But you know, it doesn't mean like not buying nothing or some drastic radical changes or things like that. It means something different to each person. Well, some people buy more clothes, other people don't buy clothes at all. They're into maybe technology or something, you know, completely different things for different people. So it's just like an individual journey. But my invitation is for all of us to just examine, especially those of us living in the West, for the love of God, please examine your consumption habits and try to reduce them, because I genuinely think that almost most of us, all of us watching this video, can reduce. Like, we absolutely can. Now, where this video comes from and why I even wanted to talk about this, why these thoughts have been in my head for like a full week, is because of this pandemic, this quarantine. Because when it first broke out and, you know, like businesses were shut and so on, I don't order, I mean, I don't shop in general. I don't really do that. But I didn't think in my head to check whether Amazon or whatever other retail online shops or whatever, if they're still delivering or not. I didn't care about that, because it just kind of made common sense to me that this is not the time to order things that like I'd be putting people's lives in danger who are, you know, delivering. Amazon workers are striking because of these conditions. Clearly they're not being protected. They're not getting hazard pay and so on and so on. It just made sense to me that this isn't the time to buy things, you know, to put people at risk. But then I went online and I saw that nope, that was not common sense. A lot of people did not feel that way. Everyone was talking about how their shopping addiction or shopping habits have gotten so much worse that they're now at home all day quarantined. And I'm not talking about essentials here. I'm not talking about people getting grocery delivered to them because they're immune compromised or because they just, you know, don't want to endanger themselves or others, or medication or stuff like that. No, honey, no. I'm talking about like summer dresses. Like, bitch, you can't even leave the house. Like, but I'm not talking about essentials. I'm talking just about people shopping like crazy during this time. Now, I know some people are going to come in here and say we all cope in different ways with this anxiety and stuff like that. And totally, like, I get it. But also, like, can we extend empathy to other people at this time, not just to ourselves? I just feel like a global pandemic might not be the time to compulsively shop when we're putting people in actual danger. And I'm sorry, I know no one wants to hear this, okay? No one wants to hear me tell them to stop having fun, to stop enjoying life, to stop buying things. But I really think that, like, at some point, us in the West really gotta stop and reflect and maybe stop prioritizing our own joy, our own short-term happiness and addiction to material things over the actual human lives of other people. I think it is extremely important for us to truly ask those questions for every single item that we buy. This is also something I want to talk about in my fast fashion video, but like everything that we get, to really hold that in our hands and think, what was the environmental cost of producing this, okay? Who made the materials? Who assembled the materials and put it together? How much were they paid for that? What conditions are they living in and what conditions are they working in, you know? Would they ever be able to buy this thing that I'm currently consuming? How many natural resources were used? How was this brought to me? What was the transportation cost like? How was this delivered to me? To be fair, the answers to those questions are always going to be ugly. As I said, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. So if I ask that about my pillow or my soy milk in the fridge, okay, like, it's not going to be nice. Those answers are not going to be nice, and we can't blame ourselves for that. Like, I'm not shifting blame onto individuals. I want to destroy capitalism. Like, I want to be crystal clear about that. I hope that people understand that. And I also, you know, we can't stop eating food just because we live in a system where it's produced in such horrendous way. I can't stop wearing clothes just because, once again, we live in a system where everything is produced basically under exploitation and in an incredibly unsustainable way. Unfortunately, you know, can't survive off of sunlight and be naked all the time. It's just not gonna work, definitely. But one thing we can do is consume less, okay? That's something we most certainly can do. Basically, if we must cause suffering to others because of the system, because of how we consume, then let it be less suffering for the love of God. Anyways, that's it for me. I hope this isn't too depressing. I hope you do understand that, like, no part of me is shifting blame onto individuals. I just think that there's a serious, I know for a fact that there's a serious overconsumption problem in the West that has a serious and real human cost and environmental cost, and that we all could use really reflecting on our consumptions. I mentioned I want to do another video just about fast fashion, another video just about veganism. I also want to talk about minimalism as a poor person, because minimalism literature is really elitist, but I have a lot to say about that as well. Anyways, please comment below if you've reflected on your own consumption habits, if you've maybe made choices to reduce and how you've gone about that, or maybe you've, chosen ways to be more sustainable. And let me know if you want me to cover other topics related to this. I'm all about it. Mother Earth is my goddess and everything. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about this more. And once again, happy Mother's Day. Love ya.